Welcome to another interview in Divine Dialogues. I am so excited for today's guest. First of all, Juliette was supposed to be the first guest on Divine Dialogues, and the day of our interview, I got diagnosed with COVID. And she lovingly reminded me about giving myself some space and some self care because I was fully going to push through, which is not walking my talk. And I need to have more friends in my life who check me like that, which was amazing. Juliette and I have been friends for a number of years. We started out as colleagues working in neurofeedback together. I have watched her grow, evolve, and shapeshift as she navigates her own journey. And that's what this is all about, right? These conversations about people living a spiritual path. Um, I am just I'm so blessed to know you, Juliette, and I'm so excited for the conversation that we're going to have today. So, to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, I feel like I just need to take in all those things that you just said, though. That's really, yeah, that's really quite endearing. And
Well, I love you.
yeah, well, love you
I don't
too.
I'm not shy about that, not at all.
Yeah, we definitely have had a long and very special relationship, and I'm just so happy to be here. And it's always great to spend time with you. So yeah, I always say yes. Yeah. Yeah. And you asked me who I am or what I did.
Both, actually.
Well, I'm Juliette Jarvis, and I currently am deep into um, heritage crafts and traditional ways, all things fiber arts and ceramics. And I bring my, you know, 15 years or something of spiritual practice in the community through um, the art that I create now to make it tangible. So we're one of the things that you and I were just talking about is all of our unseen work and spiritual practice and all that we do in those ways. Really, ultimately, we want to have it shift and manifest in our day to day lives. And so I bring soul tending through the fibers and create ritual wear and sacred ceramics.
And the
That's what I
chimes in
do.
your background, even
Yeah,
you're living it right now.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's what's really cool about you too. I've watched you in the beginning. You were at the beginning of your training when we first met. I think you were in your second year or something.
Mhm.
And so I've watched you go through initiations and ceremonies and to grow and expand. And it's been really interesting to watch how your art has shifted. Because at the beginning you did a lot that was photography and it was really
Mhm.
beautiful and you really captured the essence and the spirit of a place.
Mhm.
And then you had your watercolor, which was so playful and it was like this other energy of it, right? Whereas I felt like the photos were a little bit more serious. Even when they were playful, they were still more serious. And your watercolors were these beautiful devotions, but they had whimsy. Like there was just something about it that was
Mhm.
playful, which is you, which is so beautiful. And then to watch it evolve into what it is now, and I have I have one of your incense burners on my altar. I have just put in a commission to be able to get ceremony cups from you. Um, to watch your craft change and to watch it evolve as you do has been really, really, really cool.
Interesting. That's interesting. I wonder what that would look like.
Yeah, try to imagine it from the outside, right? Like you're just
Yeah,
living it, you're just doing you.
yeah, yeah. I definitely do just feel like I'm just living my life, and yeah, I don't think I really considered it from an outside perspective too much. So that's really interesting.
I think that
Yeah.
shows that you're kind of present with it instead of over analyzing it all.
Well, there has I have analyzed some because we get shaken sometimes internally and discombobulated, and then we try to make a little bit of sense or contextualize things to be like, what exactly is happening here right now? Um, because I was so focused on community work, like face-to-face community ceremonies and sessions, and it was beautiful and right, and it was what I had been led to do. And you've probably heard me say this a lot, is, I just follow the breadcrumbs of what I'm shown to do next, and I will do that thing for as long as I'm supported to do so. And and that means, supported as far as like people engaging with it, spirit pushing me to it, being able to live and manage it, this kind of thing. So I was very much led to a very sort of public spiritual practice. And then I moved here to the sanctuary cottage, and I was really, really deeply burnt out. And I came thinking that I was just going to pick up and, pick up, shift, to a new place with new people. And I just couldn't. I really just couldn't. And I thought, okay, well, I'll give myself some time and I'll, see what breadcrumbs come. And none of them did for a really long time. and uh and then I just had this real hermitage sort of feeling of, I'm going to shift a lot of what I did in person to online offerings, so I could still keep connected with the people who wanted to stay connected, but I was really just not able to hold space for people anymore the same way, large groups and things. And um and then and then COVID came. And
Mm.
so then we were like, and then everyone was in this hermitage, and it was exactly what I needed in some respects, because it just gave me the time and the space to go, okay, what is really happening here? There's something more than just burnout. And the analogy that I saw was, just like the ocean tides, right? The tide had been in and full, and then it was ebbing, and it was ebbing back to my own self. And I could feel aspects of that had been brewing for quite a long time, but I couldn't really put it into how that might look in my life. And so the medicine just came to be something that I did, and bringing it through in a really tangible way, and then sending it out from here to people. And what I found when that began was there had been a missing piece in the way that I was working before that I couldn't really put my finger on. And my intention the whole entire time was to really offer tools and knowledge to empower the people that I was with to find their own spiritual practices, create their own sacred living, and really like get them to find their anchor points in their traditions and their cultural heritage and this kind of thing. And when I moved, I realized that that hadn't actually landed. There was a sentiment of, well, if you're gone, how are we going to do our thing? And it's like, what are you talking
Mm.
about? you know. And so what I found is, through creating sacred objects as the main focus, it really does literally put the work into other people's hands. And so, whether it's, you know, um, a cloak to wear during spirit journeys, you know what I mean? That's something that they have now, and they can embody it, and have had that, still that same sort of support, but it's in their corner, it's in their court. So, and same with, the ceremonial ceramics, right? I'll craft craft a vessel with the intentions pressed right into the clay, and symbology that is significant for whoever I'm working with, and tailored in those ways, and then they have it. And then it's an object there that's like, ah, yes, pick me up, use me, you know, take me into ceremony with you. And it kind of just naturally keeps that power with the person that I'm working with.
Yeah, it's as someone who has received your things and also participated in the practice of developing your own stuff, because we painted my drum together, we built my rattle
Mm.
together. Um I really love that way of teaching where I felt held the entire time. And certainly art wise, it's not my strength. And you really showed me how to be able to make something beautiful with my own hands. And so that idea of channeling and bringing forward like this divine thing is very abstract, and just like living a spiritual life is abstract, and
Mm-hmm.
this gave you a tangible thing to be able to channel it into, so you get to be present with it. But the other thing is that whole weekend that I was there was very self-directed as well. Like, I remember when I finished the drum, you were like, okay, well, now you're going to bond with your drum, let her teach you her song, and you left, and I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? Like, and I sat there and I banged her, and it took a little while, but I don't think she could have showed me her song if you had been like, well, here's a beat. I would have just followed the beat.
Mm-hmm.
I would have, it would have been monkey see, monkey do. And the way you teach is like, person is held, but agency is so big. And we get to be stewards of our own practice. And I think that that's really important, because even the responsibility of being someone's guru is not your thing, but like, you've never been that. You've always been very like grounded and anchored and whatever. And having received teachings where there's that separation of the teacher and the student, and then having had this experience with you, it really is so much more empowering.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
I know that it came from this place of burnout, and to that degree, there's the protection of yourself in that too, right? But I feel like some people could have gone a path where it was just like boundary, boundary, boundary. And instead, what you've done is said, like, how can I take this sacred work and work in a way that is empowering to them and protective of me? So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel like you're holding back. It doesn't feel like you're guarded. It just feels like you're there as a presence if I need you. And it's up to me to make this what I want it to be and what I need it to be.
I think that's really what I'm just going to speak for everyone. I think that's really a medicine that's really quite needed at this time, particularly. We've had so much, like you say, it's all intellectual or intangible, and even before, like I would try to have like the spiritual context of why we were gathering, and then often trying to bring some kind of tangible piece into it. And this is some of the tracking from um, before things really shifted. Like I needed that burnout to really make that clean shift. Instead of trying to bring something tangible into spiritual practice, it's more tangible with spiritual practice infused into it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that we tend to be here, at least in the West, like very inner minds, analytical. Um, there's so much that's not tangible, even just here we are, we're face to face and having a conversation, but we're not actually right present. And I think it creates a yearning for something really tangible to hold, something solid, something
Real.
provable, like um, you know, we we have this wonderful ability to be super etheric, but we also are here in physical bodies, and we need that sometimes just to really wrap up in or hold. And I think um, especially since what happened with COVID and people being so isolated, that we need that even more now, even if we don't realize it, just in our nervous systems of like, okay, here's something I can touch and I can hold. And, even when we're thinking of some of these great travesties that are happening in the world, it's like, what can I do? What can I actually act on and do? And a lot of the time there isn't a lot, or we don't have the capacity for whatever reason, but we can do this, like
Mm-hmm.
what's right in front of us right here right now. I can, you know whatever it is, I can weave a shawl that's going to support someone else in their healing journey. Or yeah. And I just try to bring all of those things. I mean, I have for a long time, but so much more now because I'm able to focus on this work entirely, is really just equating what I'm doing at any time with some sort of etheric or spiritual aspect, you know? So um, I think you and I were having just a call a little while ago, and I was carding wool, and we were talking through things and trying to make sense of stuff as we do, and carding this wool. And I told you, I said I'm literally taking tangled fibers and creating order. Everything is being laid straight, and so let some of that affect what we're working through, and then also let some of what we're working through come into these fibers that are now laid nice and straight, and then they'll be spun with the similar intentions and things like that. So that's you know the level that I spend most of my days in.
Well, I think there's a degree of intentionality there where it's like, while you're working with it, it's not just working with it, it's being mindful of, okay, I just had a flashback. It's being mindful of like the environment that you're doing it in. We had a client, a brain client many moons ago who was going through like a pretty significant depression, postpartum depression, and was really, really disconnected. And she was a body worker. And I remember us talking about our own responsibility to like heal ourselves and whatever, particularly when we're working with people. Because while she was carrying all of that heartache, she was still also working with people's bodies, right? And we were like, I hope that we can help her neutralize this so that she's not having to either carry that or infuse it in her work. And I don't think people realize just how much what we say, what we think, what we surround ourselves with impacts the work that we do and how we show up and how we're perceived. You can say all the right things, but if the energy is wrong, it's a big fucking no, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's I love that you bring that presence to it. Um I remember you what I don't know if it's when you first started weaving. It was like I feel like it's a little while ago we had a conversation and you told me about how your ancestors were talking to you about how to weave because you'd inherited this loom or something and you're like, I don't know what to do. And they were
Yeah.
like, hey, I got you. Like, can you tell us about that? Because I thought that was very cool.
Yeah. I actually wrote about that a little bit. I called it something like learning to weave through ghosts or something. And yeah, it's another one of those things that I'm sure you and anyone else can relate to it. You have an experience and then you can look back and go, oh yeah, here's the tracking of it slowly brewing. And weaving has been one of those things that's been slowly brewing for a very, very long time. And to the point where looms were coming to my studio. My temple space is now a studio, so it's both. Call it a temdio, like a temple studio. Um, and they would just sit there and wait for me to finally, catch up to what I was being shown to do. And so I think like two looms had already arrived, and I had materials from a long time ago.
And
And
this is the 2020s. Like,
yeah,
people
this
are
is
not fucking looming. It's not like, this isn't a cup of sugar that the neighbor dropped off. Like, it's
yeah.
already a rare thing and it hit you twice.
It well, then it
Two
hit me
times.
a third time, and that's, when it
You
happened
can't
when
deny it at that point.
the third time, the third loom came with a project already on it. And so
They're
I was
like,
like,
just in
"Okay,
case you need somewhere to start, here you go.
all right then." Like, the first one I had to put together, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know how to do that." And then the second one, it needed some restoration, and I'm like, "I don't really know what I'm doing." And then another one came with a project on it.
Did you ask?
And
Did you say to your ancestors, look, if you want me to pick this up, you gotta give me a starting point. Like, don't ask me to start from zero. Give me 10%.
I
Like, did you
you know,
call that in?
I don't know that I specifically called it in. I felt it coming and I felt it brewing for a long time. Like, and also like at the Fine Arts Center that I was doing a lot of my ceramics in also has a weaving department across the floor.
Mm.
And my COVID bubble buddy for ceramics, she crossed the floor to the dark side. That's what we like to say. It's like the weaving side. And I could always hear them like laughing over there because it's like it can be when, there's a long history of women working together in these ways and men working in their ways and all of them working all together. But there's something I think that gets activated when we get together in some of these traditional skill sets that just have sociality imbued right into them. So I could hear them laughing. I mean, clay you're throwing, and it's very focused and precise and things like that. And so anyway, I knew that my time would come, but I was actually I struggled a lot with depression at the same time through COVID, and so I just knew like my head was not clear enough to take in the information I needed, and I was just waiting for that fog to lift, really. And so then, yeah, this loom came, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to follow this urge to like be touching it and doing the little foot pedals and seeing what it was all about. Um and so I just began. I just sort of followed my intuition, and I followed these nudges. I could feel my grandmother. My grandmother was a weaver, and I have very, very early memories of sitting at her feet as she was weaving on what turns out to be like an enormous draw loom, like it doesn't even fit in most people's houses, like huge. I thought it was just big because I was small. But actually, in the weaving department, there's a woman there who wove with my grandmother, and so there's been a whole lot of ancestral medicine that has come through with this for me. So anyway, my grandmother was present, and I just kind of followed nudges, and the loom itself, like different things would break on it and then I'd have to fix it. And so then I was really being introduced and shown the workings of it just through that. And then I crossed the floor, and took out a book from their library and started learning from the book, and started going to all the weaving nights at the Fine Arts Center. And it's a um, mentorship based teaching style. So just all the women there, like, this is how you do. And so now this is what I do.
I
And
love that. It,
yeah.
it, I remember when you told me that, I was like, even though this has been my world for so long, I felt magical. It felt like, oh my God, like that would never happen to me. And
Don't say
it,
that
no,
again.
no, it did. This is what I'm saying. It really felt like, oh, of course, this is a juju thing. Like she's just magical, of course. And then in March, I started studying with a new teacher, and ancestral work is a huge part of what we do.
Yeah.
And I think it was like the first or second call, I felt a new guide come online, but it wasn't anyone I recognized. So I was like, okay, like I feel you, but I have no idea who the fuck you are. And then I started getting obsessed with my garden. I have killed everybody. We had a peace lily in our office that I killed on the regular, but because they're basically the Jesus of plants, it would
I
come back to
have that
life
one.
every time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so yeah, so I killed that plant more times than I can count, and it would come back to life.
It's so forgiving. Yeah.
It was so forgiving. It was a good starter plant. Um, but I have been like notorious for having fake plants in my house because I can't keep anything alive. And here I am reading about like what the deer aren't going to eat in my yard, and going and talking to the people at the garden center every week. And then I planted all this shit. Of course, it's full of weeds right now. It totally went crazy, but it
Well, it's been
started.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, so it started with the front yard, and then I started talking about rescuing plants at Home Depot. And next thing you know, I came home with 5 plants, and like one of them died, but the other guys are still hanging on. They all have names. I talked to them, and I was like, where is this coming from? Like, I just thought it was like a weird spontaneous, like, oh, there's Seryna. She's decided she likes plants. This is her hobby of the week or whatever. And then I was telling my grandma, and my grandma goes, I love I loved my garden. It was so cool. And do you know who taught me how to garden? I said, who? She says, Mommy Kay, which was my great grandmother on the other side, so her mother-in-law.
Oh,
And something went, ding, and I'm like, that's the guide who came online. And she apparently had these like amazing, incredible gardens. And she came online, and suddenly I'm like, in love with plants, even though I've always and they're not dead, except for that one little shriveled guy, but everybody's still holding on.
yeah.
And it's just now in this moment. Oh, hi Freya. It's just now in this moment where I had the realization that I was like, oh, that'll never happen to me. Like, Julia, it's just magic. And it totally fucking did. Like, it's very interesting. And I think too, like the reminder that like if you can see it in someone else, if you can appreciate it in someone else, it means it's either already in you or it's available to you.
Mm,
Right.
that's
And remembering that, because it also kind of goes for the shadow side. Like when
mhm.
we catch ourselves in judgment, um, there's a good chance that there is something about that is also resonant
It
for us in our
makes
path.
it makes me also consider a lot of ancestral work is around cleaning things up and resolving trauma, and yet we also inherit such incredible gifts at the same time. And I think
And
that's
that doesn't get talked about nearly enough.
no, it's often overlooked. And you know, sometimes I think of it as sort of our natural abilities to things that we don't know where it came from. It's like, I never learned how to do this. How come I'm good at it? Um, and it is also just those opportunities that suddenly just flow, and then here you are, whether it's an interest or a talent for something, or yeah, yeah, it's really interesting the medicines that can come through. And it makes me think very much of like, ah, yes, they say that our ancestors dream us into being, and they're passing along gifts and wisdom, and we don't necessarily have to have sat at their feet and listened to their stories for that to happen.
We just have to be open, because I think so
And follow
much.
those nudges, right? Like,
Yeah.
you could have gone, no, I'm not turning into the Home Depot
The plant
today.
lady. Yeah. It's funny because every time I try to weed this one type of plant, I don't know where it came from. It's prickly, and I forget every single time. And every single time I go in there and I yoink it and I cut my fingers and I go, fuck. And yet I go back out another week later and I stab myself on the plant again. And I feel like there's something, even that, there's medicine in that. It's like what not that medicine has to be painful, but like,
It's
like,
getting your attention.
and why don't I remember? And is it because I'm not weeding with intention? Am I not being present? And is that a way of pulling me into the moment? Like, and this is where we have to treat everything that we do as sacred. Every
Yeah.
conversation we have, every action, every breath we take, and there will be lessons in them. We just have to be present for them. And maybe you don't know what they are. I don't know what the weed lesson is, but I know there's something there, because otherwise I would have put on gloves before I went weeding at least once.
Hmm.
You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
I wonder what that plant is.
I'll take a picture of it and send it to you. You probably know. I have
I
I
don't know.
don't even know where these guys have come from, to be honest. Like, we have when we had landscapers come last year, and they put that black landscaping tarp thingy underneath
Yeah,
it. They
yeah.
should not be able to grow, and they root. Like, if anything, it should be like a shallow, because it's just in like the soil and the mulch. But no,
Mhm.
these motherfuckers have found a way, and I don't know how, but they are determined. And I'm like, oh, to have the determination of a
Maybe
West Coast weed.
maybe you just hit upon it right there.
Tell me
No,
more.
we were just talking before I think our call officially began. We were talking about having the determination to see through and follow through on insights and nudges and wisdoms that we are given, even when perhaps it's a bit daunting.
Yeah,
And
or it doesn't make sense.
when you have that, determination to see it through, similarly as this plant who keeps going,
Mm,
hello, poke, poke. I
yeah.
also think too,
And I'm also a little prickly.
well, there's nothing wrong with that either, too, right? Like, we don't always I like to think of the extremes when somebody presents something to me, and the extremes that it could go to and then not become a truth anymore.
Mm.
And I think about, you know, when you said everything we do, has that potential to become a sacred act. And also some of the base and, rude and prickly, like, I can never say her name. Is it Bao? Goddess Bob, with she's just a vulva and a
Mm.
head, like
Mhm.
legs, I think, and there is still a sacredness to that, sort of base living, but it also brings us that context, or that balance, right? It keeps us kind of raw and raunchy and real. We don't have to always have this pressure of like, well, my mindset wasn't completely enlightened in that moment, and that's like a real kind of gaslighting pressure that can happen, you know and
Mhm.
so you're stabbing yourself at with this plant and swearing at it and things, like maybe that brings sort of the levity to some of the other work that you do, or
For sure.
illumination, or um, even in, if you're thinking of like feng shui and things like that, like we do have to have some of those prickly bits to balance the soft.
It's true. I put in all those peonies and they're really like pretty, so
Yeah.
we got to balance out the softness with a little something, little spice, because it is all balance. Like ultimately,
Or maybe
it's
your plants just need a blood sacrifice from you.
honestly, I would not be surprised because they are really. Hasn't hurt myself on this fucking weed, and he's not going anywhere. And then I went to go and grab another one, literally because yesterday was garbage day, and so we were putting out the green bin, and um I'm yoinking, yoinking, everything's coming out, everything's good. And I get to that guy, cut my hand on him, and I'm like, oh, motherfucker. And then I go to do it on another one of the same weed. And as I'm reaching down, I see the little prickles, and I'm like, oh, not today. So, but it was fully prepared to take a second sacrifice. It was like,
It's like, yes,
you've been away, you've been sick, you have neglected me.
come back to your body. Yeah.
Bring it in. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the teacher I'm currently studying with was like the first person who was talking to me about blood sacrifices, and she's had some really nasty ones on hikes and things like that. And we talked about this. I had like a really like the most profound ceremony of my life with her like a
Mm,
week and a half ago now, almost 2 weeks ago. And I expected it to be bloody. I expect it was a completely different kind of pain, but I went into it expecting there would be something like that. And even then expecting there to be pain, like what is it about us that believes that evolution is painful?
yeah, that's
I'm calling
interesting.
myself out there.
Yeah, I've had that experience. Yeah, going into ceremony that, expecting my butt to be kicked in like a really awful way. And then, my teacher at the time said to me, it's not interesting that you expect it, the significant changes to be hard.
Hmm. I wonder if that's so. You and I have very different origin stories, but we both carry a hard youth in different capacities. And I do kind of wonder if how much of that those years that shaped us shape how we view change because we grew through pain. Like that was how we started, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we have
You
to
know,
kind of heal that.
it's interesting because I just wrote that actually for August's magazine column.
Interesting.
I wrote about, I think it's called In the Name of Comfort. And it
Mm,
talks about um, that very same experience, actually, where I was in extreme discomfort and had to make the effort towards comfort. And that was what spirit was urging me to do was, I'd gotten so well adept at navigating painful situations that it didn't even phase me anymore. I was like, hard conversation, I'll have it. Crummy situation, I'll just fucking walk through it. Like,
Yeah.
because that's just what I had to do to survive. And then this experience really brought me to, okay, now you need to make the effort towards comfort.
Mm.
And out of that has also led me to specifically, call on, I'm ready to learn my lessons in a heart centered, beautiful, unfolding way now instead of only hard lessons, and just really trying to cultivate, like, I am open and willing to learn from the good things. I promise to notice them and take them just as seriously. And
Yeah.
um, you were saying it to me earlier too, like all about ease. How can we make this easier for ourselves? And not
Mhm.
because we're trying to like shirk any sort of effort or commitments, but just simply out of preservation and balance and rightness.
Also for me, I feel like it's almost to like hard stuff is almost easy because it's what I've known. So if I want to challenge myself, ease and joy, as tragic as that is to admit, ease and joy are harder lessons than
It's
something
true.
challenging. When I was putting together, I don't think I have a copy of it handy. I made myself a page a day journal, and I channeled from the guides, like, what do you want me to be reflecting on, like every single day? And one of them, it says something to the effect of like, where am I going to find joy, or where will I find fun? Something along the lines. And I was
Mm.
like, every day. And it was like, every day. How are you going to make this fun? And it is, of all the things that are on that page, it is the one that is the hardest to fill out every day. And like, in general, I would consider myself like a happy person. And so it's interesting to look at that and be like,
You're super playful.
and I'm
You
very
are.
playful. Yeah. So it's like, how is choosing fun my challenge every day? Like, what the, like, and also who did I become? Look, okay, I need you to see this. So I've got an inner child altar over in the corner here, but I literally have a rainbow floaty unicorn duck that was gifted to me by my best friend sitting on my desk, and I have a hard time finding joy every day. Oh, how,
There.
and I think that that's what it is. It's like, it's definitely not the like, oh yeah, I want to cop out, or I want to like make this whatever. It's harder work. Oh, they're
You know,
showing me in the ceremony, um because everyone else got naked. I didn't get naked, but I had been, and normally I'm like, I'm very happy to be naked. That would have been easy. But I got dunked with water. I was fully clothed, soaking in water before I went into ceremony. And so for me, I was like, I don't have the energy to take off all these wet clothes and put them back on again. Like, that's why I'm not getting naked. And I said to them, I'm like, I think getting here and all the things that it took to get here was more naked than me stripping down
yeah,
naked right now. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
finding that thing that is the challenge, even if it's not the expected challenge.
yeah.
Sometimes ease is that.
Well, it makes me think too about somebody. I don't remember who said it to me or if I read it somewhere, like really a long time ago. I picked up from someone else that people in general, there's like a fear of particularly women who are happy. That on
Mm.
some level, that makes others uncomfortable. And so whenever I'm, you know, told something like this, I really ruminate on it and try to feel it out in all of its extremes. And and it's really made me notice, like, even just asking, well, how many people do we know who are actually happy and like expressively happy? Like they could be
Mm-hmm.
content and happy in their own lives, but are like
Joyous.
unapologetically
Yeah.
happy out in the world and unabashedly, really reveling in their joy of life. Okay, that's going to be a bit extreme because like life is full of hard things too. But also, when we do see it, what are the reactions to that? What do we feel? It's like it can be uncomfortable when we perceive someone else to be happy and we really long for that.
Mhm.
I think maybe, there's a history of suppressing emotional, like, for some reason it's maybe being seen as a bit unacceptable.
Mhm.
And so then if we're looking at um, really living into a joy-filled life and being happy, and being able to say that. And I know I've noticed a few things within myself of like, I'll be really excited about something, really happy about something, and it meets resistance where other people are like trying to chip it down or um, somehow turn it, you know, towards them, like in different ways, or even also to the point where I have noticed within myself the 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 inclination to then dim my own joy or proudness or excitement over something.
Mhm.
And so it's something that I've been tracking. And I don't want to say that people fear those who appear happier than them, but it's something that I've been noticing.
I think there's something about the power that somebody holds for them over themselves when they are happy and when they are content and when they're not on that quest for constant self-improvement.
It's a
Um,
pretty empowering place to
it
be
is.
like, I am happy, I'm living my dream life,
And of
or
course,
whatever,
people are going
proud
to
of
try to
the
tear
work
that down.
I've done. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really, really interesting.
Because then we don't have power over them. And then for those of us who are wanting that, I know there are a lot of times where I thought people were faking,
Hmm.
which is awful.
Yeah,
Um, or exaggerating or whatever. And um, it's hard to just witness somebody in that place where the outside world doesn't have control over how they feel about themselves. And I think that's the patriarchy, to be honest, because we don't really do it about men. Not really. Men don't radiate in the same way, but
yeah,
I feel like we're
yeah.
more confident, we're more
Maybe they're
comfortable.
seen as strong or something, or I don't know. I haven't really explored it for other gender expressions than my
Yeah.
own. So, but it also makes me think of, well, then what's the remedy to
Mm,
be as unapologetically happy as we are naturally in any moment, and to really revel in other people's joy,
yeah.
just
And to
in what,
look at it as something that's possible for you too.
yeah, yeah,
It's not like joy is pie. There's like, 6 slices and everybody else is
yeah.
screwed. Like, no, there's infinite slices of joy pie. And
Joy
we can
pie for all.
joy pie for all. Yeah, we need t-shirts. Uh, but it's true. It's so true. And we're both Leos. And I feel like the work I'm doing right now in my healing and my reclamation and how I relate to particularly other women, all of it is just trying to get back to who I was as a child because
Yeah.
I was unapologetically radiant. And I grew up with a bunch of Scorpios and they would all be like, "Oh my God, she's such a Leo."
Same,
And I
same.
really built a story that being warm, vivacious, chatty, center of attention, all these things was bad. And that
Right.
I had to dim, I had to dull because otherwise I'd be judged for it. And right now, all I wish is that I had that same liberation to be in that place. And I have moments of it, but so much of
And
it is just trying to shed everything I have learned from, let's say, 1988 onward or something. You know what I mean? Like maybe even before that, but yeah, like I want to get back to who I was at like 7, 8 years old.
well, you know, I resonate with some of that, and it I always say it makes me think of there was a time where I really stop sharing my art
Mm.
because inevitably it made other people feel bad. They'd be like, "Oh, that's so nice. Oh, but I can't draw. Oh, I can't do it." And so then I was like, "Well, this isn't good. I don't want people to feel bad, so I'll just keep it all to myself." And that's when, the again somebody said to me about, I think they used a candle as an analogy as far as like your light illuminates the way for others and how light grows and fire spreads, right?
Mhm.
And it shifted that for me into thinking, okay, well, my light isn't casting shadows, it's actually illuminating for others. And inspiration became a concept of like, I can be inspired by others who are living, their medicines fully. And by myself doing so too, it also might inspire others rather than having them um, feel less than in some way.
And if they do, that's their responsibility. That's
It
their
is.
work to heal. It's not your job to dim.
It's
To
still hard though. I'm not gonna lie. It is still really, really hard, and maybe that's something that can be encouraged in people is to really check themselves when they feel inspired or they find something in another that they appreciate or long for. Just making sure that you're not accidentally tearing somebody else down with with them, um, in whatever they say next, or however they approach it. But all of those things that you're talking about the vivaciousness and really being present in who you are, it's very strong, and it is those things that um, you know help show the way. We were talking about Ellen of the Ways a little while ago too, right? It's way showing and way finding, and you're not going to necessarily trust a path that's being, forged by somebody who doesn't actually know the way.
hmm.
Be like, oh, maybe I'm just following you into being lost. But when you're confident of like, ah, yes, I know where I'm going. Come with me. Let's go. Those are, those leadership qualities that create trust and dependability. So
And we
maybe,
need those teachers who have
yeah.
been there and who have done that, who are walking alongside us with the flashlight in hand, being like, want to avoid that little dark pocket over there. This is the way to the path. And like, I do think that there's something to be said about teachers who have backgrounds like ours, where there had been a lot of tough lessons and a lot of hardship. Um, we we've been there, done that, and zero judgment when the bad stuff comes up or the harder emotions come up, because we're like, yeah, it is really shitty, get
It's
it.
part of it.
But
That's
two of
who we
yeah,
are.
exactly. And then secondly, it is and this is something I've said to my clients, I will never take you somewhere that I'm not willing to go myself or that I haven't been
Mm,
myself.
that's
And
really important. That's a really beautiful thing.
yeah, because then they feel safe and held, because
Yeah.
I came out the other side, so they know that it's possible.
It's possible. Yeah.
And sometimes that's all we need when it feels really big and scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And coming back to ancestral stuff, through art
Yeah.
or not through art, um, you know, when I initially started engaging with it, particularly with healing of my lineage, I really thought about it as being this like backward thing. So that all of
Mhm.
those souls that came before me in my lineage were now not burdened with these lessons. And when they reincarnate and have new lives, they're not stuck repeating these same habits and patterns and whatever, or at least they're getting less of it because most of it's been transmuted. And then I thought about how it was a shame that I didn't have children biologically, because I had a story that like it was wasted. I
Mm,
was helping a bunch
interesting.
of dead people, and like nobody going forward was going to benefit. You, however, have children. You have daughters in particular, if we're talking about like maternal line healing. Um, I have the belief now, and tell me like if you know this to be different or not, but I believe that we also clear laterally. So I'm clearing for my sisters, I'm clearing for my nieces and nephews and things like that as well.
I was gonna say so. Yeah, I was gonna
Cousins.
say exactly that.
Yeah.
And also too. the people that we take under our wing, can potentially be, um, because there's other lineages, right? There's bloodlines, there's milk lines, there's what are spirit lines. There's other lineages that we are working with as well. And if you think of energetic fields, right, and just fine tuning those fields to be more harmonious wherever you go, whoever is sitting with you, wherever you're putting that energy is going to be affected thusly, I would say. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a direct bloodline. and
Bloodline.
and with my daughters, I actually have a son as well, and he's the one who's like really looking forward to dadship. One of my daughters for sure will not be having children. The other one, I'm not so sure about. Um, so it's interesting to think about when our bloodline perhaps doesn't continue in the way that we think that it might or expect it to.
Mm-hmm.
And on that same token, it's interesting because because I've been thinking lately about inherited physical hardships. So we have endometriosis that runs in my family,
Mm-hmm.
and we've every generation has had daughters, and so it makes me think of what if my daughters don't have any children, and what if my son does? What if my son has a boy? Maybe that inherited painful um, hardship can just be like snuffed out, and things will just find their way and carry on. I don't
It's so interesting that you specifically mentioned endometriosis because the interview that I did literally yesterday with Praveen, we were talking about this and about how many women healers have some sort of reproductive trouble, endometriosis being a really big one. Like for me, it was fibroids, but like,
know.
and we were actually discussing our theories about why that is. So I'd love to know what your theory is about why that might be.
Oh, endometriosis in women with who are in a healing field.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Well, I've not really pondered it in a bigger way than how it affects my own self. So I'm only going to sort of speak there. But gosh, chronic illness just really brings up so much, doesn't it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
to the strength to endure it, the insights that come when you were with when you were sick with COVID, and I was like, oh well, maybe just notice any weird dreams you might have, any sort of fever insights and things like that. Sometimes that comes in extreme pain. Um, I do know that when I have a bigger emotional month, my bleeding time is often way harsher.
Mm.
So, there can be a level of working with that, in different ways. Um, and also, currently, what's been happening is really being forced to create a rhythm in my life that accommodates for all my states. So, you know,
That's totally anti-capitalist. I love it
it's
because it's room for you to be exactly where you are.
this world is not geared for bleeding people. It's not geared for chronic illness sufferers, experiencers. Yeah, and we live in such like a hormonally driven cycle that there's just no denying it. Some days are brain fog days. Some days are too painful to walk. Some days I'm full of sharp clarity and lots of energy. And so trying to always have um, this space to be wherever I'm at, and also I have to stay alive and keep my livelihood, right? So,
Of course, because there's
you
still
know,
3D realities and demands.
right? So, some days are writing days. Like if I have a month for a lot of my writing deadlines. They run in month-long cycles, conveniently. Um, and so on those days where perhaps my body is not up to doing things, if my brain is clear, those are writing days,
Mm,
or I'll sit and spin wool, and I'll just work into my capacity. And I think, if we're going back to the thought of perhaps some of the whys, the energetic or spiritual lessons and wisdoms that come with something like endometriosis or fibroids, you know, perhaps it is that sometimes we just need that like immovable, hard kick in the pants to really make us take a head knowledge and make it a real knowing, like a real
mhm,
body knowledge. And when we talk about, you know, living in a cyclical way or in harmony with our bodies, listening to our bodies, listening to the nature around us, this kind of thing, sometimes we just maybe need something as intense to really make us do it. Because, like you say, society does not encourage it or support it at all. We're supposed to show up every single day with the same capacity.
mhm.
Like men's cycle is 24 hours,
Yeah.
So it's like it's the same 24 hours. And it's like, no, it's not how that works for a good many of us, right?
Mhm. Yeah, what my current philosophy is, the only thing I need to do every day is show up and do my best. And I
Mm.
know that my best is malleable because sometimes,
That's important. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes my best is, yep, my wife calls them the duvet days, where you're just going to spend the day in bed, you're going to watch Netflix, you're going to scroll on your phone, you're going to have some snacks in bed, you're going to cuddle a cat, and like that's what's possible. And
Absolutely.
sometimes it is massive creative inspiration where I'm forgetting to eat because I'm like just so immersed in it, whatever I'm making, and I'm riding that wave. And I think, we are both lucky that we work for ourselves, so we have the flexibility to be able to create space for that. But
It's true. It's a real blessing. But I
yeah,
was also forced into it too. And I don't know if you were, but it was impossible for me to continue in traditional work settings.
oh, that was the same thing with me when I had my burnout in 2013. Like, and to have done it while working in neurofeedback, where we were literally healing the very thing I was suffering with,
Yeah.
and I was taking it home every day, like sometimes I think you're right. I think particularly also when you have a history of having to keep going because
Mhm.
it comes from a place of hardship and trauma. That's the programming. And sometimes you need a wall that you cannot keep going through.
I actually, my son just graduated at this early summer, and before that, of course, his exams and things. And he is wickedly smart, and also very self-driven and has a perfection mindset. And the stress was getting to him at one point, and I told him, I said, it was the night before one of these exams, and I told him that I was about to tell him, just do your best. It's going to be fine, but I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you to half-ass it.
Mm.
And it's like, because you're half-assing it is going to be more than enough.
Hmm.
And it's sort of impossible for him to actually do a poor job even at half-ass. So it's like we can't break ourselves to meet these expectations, or even self-imposed expectations. So I know that's something I struggle with as an entrepreneur. I'm sure you do too, as far as like this, this deadline. I actually created the deadline in my own head.
The number of times I've had to remind myself when I'm
Yeah.
wigging out over a deadline that I'm like, nobody cares. It's literally just me. And I'm having a
Yeah.
panic attack over it. Like, what the fuck, Seryna? Just change the deadline. You're the boss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's
Yeah.
brutal. You're
So I
calling
mean,
me out,
maybe
Juliette. You're calling me out a lot on this call.
that's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. It's yeah, it's wild. Okay, so we were supposed to be talking about art. We've kind of gone everywhere, which I think is typical of us and also the whole point. Because spirituality isn't just one linear focus, and having space for all of it and how it expresses itself, I think is important. Um, I've been feeling a nudge to ask you about if someone is at the beginning of their journey of looking for a tangible way of, maybe meditation doesn't work for them. Maybe, like they're looking for their channel of connection, and they're listening to this talk and they're like, maybe it's art, but they've never picked up a paintbrush in their life. They don't have looms showing up at their door or whatever it is. Where do you think they start?
I have two answers. So the first answer is to, um, okay, wait, I have three answers.
We're here for all of them.
Okay, don't let me forget. Okay, first answer, take a look to your childhood and what were you interested in? What, what did you always want to do? Second answer would be to check in with your physical body for a sense of movement. Do you have this urge to like spread paint? Do you have an urge to dance? Do you have an urge to, um, because I see this even for like finding your method of divination, right? It's like, do you have an urge to throw something down on the ground and take a look at it? Or do you have an urge to, um, flip cards or something, like, you know what I mean? So like following that physical urge and seeing where it could lead you. And you might be surprised, as far as like physical movement might first appear as dance, but then it also comes onto the canvas,
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thing. And my third answer is to just begin in every sort of thing that you do. Um, if you are chopping up veggies for the soup, you know, start putting it in there, as far as like, maybe it's carrots you've pulled from the garden and you're like, ah, yes, thank you to these beings. Maybe and you're
Washing the dishes is a big one. I always
oh
think
yeah,
of.
you're clearing the crap out of all of your life as you're clearing it off your dish.
Mhm.
Stir your intentions into your soup. Like, this is love soup, bringing harmony to my family, and stirring it clockwise and just sort of putting it into things like I said before about equating our physical actions with a spiritual tending or a soulful tending, and then just allowing it to guide you and lead you from there. So then next time perhaps you're just doodling, it's like, oh, I've done this with people. I'll be on the phone and holding space for them as they're sharing something really really hard for me, and I'll just be doodling, as one does when they're on the phone sometimes. And channeling the sort of space holding and loving presence into that doodle. And perhaps their remedy, like if they're talking about maybe like a hardship in a romantic relationship, maybe having that sense of like wonderful ease in a romantic relationship and just letting it flow through as you're really still present with the person.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like letting it be automatic and just sort of happening in the sidelines, and then send them the doodle afterwards. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's it can sneakily arrive into your life, and yeah, and notice those things. Maybe somebody gives you some really nice feeling paper or something,
Mm-hmm.
and just being willing to take those chances and not feel like you have to show anybody, not feel like it has to be good, not feeling like you have to know how to do anything, and just letting the action of it be the medicine.
Your chimes got louder right as you said that. So I think that there's something really big there.
They're pretty good
Um,
chimes.
yeah, I think there is something to that of like letting it be imperfect and not expecting it to be great, especially when you're first starting. I also love the extension of, you know, finding your art being things like how you're doing the dishes or how you're chopping vegetables or making soup or
So
whatever.
your whole
Because
life is art.
yes,
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's probably a good place to wrap up. I am so glad we had this conversation. We have these like juicy talks on our own. And I think that being able to create a space like this, um, allows other people to participate in it because not everybody has a Juliette that they can have these random talks with. So I get
Not
to share
everyone
you with
has
the
a
world. It's true.
Seryna.
You get to share me with the world. How lucky is that? How lucky are we?
We are quite
Yeah.
fortunate.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So, for those of you watching the replay, these conversations happen inside the Sacred Soul Sisterhood. Today, we don't have anyone joining us, but they would be, whoops, as I hit my microphone, they would be in these little circles at the bottom of the screen and they'd be able to come and ask questions. And this is something that I absolutely love for our members. Um, what was I going to say about that? Oh, these happen once a month. So expect to see more of these conversations, completely not podcast style, and in these little whimsical environments that we cook
It's
up.
really sweet. I
Isn't
like
it
it.
so cute? I fucking love it here. It's ridiculous. But I'll make sure that I have the links to the sisterhood in the show notes so that if that was something that you were looking for, if you were trying to find your own community, that this might be the one you are looking for. So we are going to end the recording now. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.